Ladies and gentlemen, Violent Games here. Today I'm going to be covering Mercy, one of my favorite heroes in Overwatch. Definitely in my top 5, by the way. Would totally put her in top 5. She's awesome. So, I'm going to start with her passive. We'll start this one a little different this time. Her passive gives her a passive heal that activates after 3 seconds from taking damage. And it's a passive heal of 20 health per second. So basically, if you take too much damage or whatever, you can just stay out of combat for a bit and your health will regen over time. Pretty useful, since you're going to be trying to be evasive anyhow. If you can properly dodge people, you'll get your health right back up from all the damage you may have sponged for one of your teammates. So I like it. But the other component of Angelic Descent is that you can hover. After jumping from a taller point is when it's worth it, really. You can hover for a short period of time. I think this is a great way to enter team fights. Maybe if you got pushed back or you had to go and heal. The way you should re-enter is by jumping off a higher platform so that you're less easy to hit and you don't get hit by any unnecessary crossfire from the team fight. So that's how I think Angelic Descent's best utilized. Moving on to the Catechist Staff. Probably not how it's pronounced, but we're going with it anyhow. Catechist Staff shoots off a target-locked beam. Basically, it means that you barely have to aim the thing. Your crosshair doesn't even necessarily have to be on your teammate to heal them with this. That's what target-locked beam kind of means. Now let's go over the rest of the stats on it. It has a damage multiplier when you use the R1, where it increases 30% damage boost, or it's a 30% damage boost on one of your allies. Pretty damn tasty. I like it. But I have something to say about it before we move on from it. The only time you should use damage buff is on Bastion in turret mode and characters who are ulting 9 times out of 10. Sometimes there are exceptions, like say you have like an MLG Soldier 76, it might be good to damage buff him a lot, but in general I think you should really focus on healing, because most people in competitive and in public, or in pub games, don't utilize Mercy's damage buff properly when you're using it on them. That's just my experience, but that's how I feel about the damage buff. So let's move on to the main fire of the staff, which is a heal that heals for 60 health per second. They increased it from the old one, which was 50, and this is a great improvement, and I think it makes Mercy viable again, comparatively to Ana Amari. Now, the maximum range of each beam is 15 meters, and the duration of each beam is as long as you're holding it and you don't break a line of sight or spacing. That's all I have to say about the Catechist Staff. Really. I mean, you should stick to healing for the most part. So let's move on to the Catechist Blaster. The Catechist Blaster shoots out a linear projectile, so no hit scan. That's a bummer. This gun would be crazy if it was hit scan, so I understand why they did it. The damage is 20. The projectile speed is 40 meters per second, so that's how fast it travels, is 40 meters per second. The rate of fire is 5 rounds per second, the ammo is 20, and the reload time is 1. So let's go over the damage per second on this thing real quick. Since it shoots at a rate of fire of 5, we take the damage of 20, and we can take the math and say that her highest damage per second potential is 100, and headshot multiplier, her max DPS is 200. So it's actually really not a bad weapon. In fact, I actually would recommend that instead, if you're thinking of an instance where you're trying to help a teammate in a fight, they have plenty of health and you're not worried about their health being depleted, but you want to contribute to the fight, so you think about damage buffing them. In that instance where you think that damage buffing might be viable, it's actually more viable, in my opinion, to switch to the Blaster and aid them in the fight that way. And the reason being is because there is no damage fall off on the Catechist Blaster. Your damage is very consistent, and I find it very easy, if you get a little practice in, tracking targets with it, to hit people with this blaster. So I think it's way more viable than people are using it out to be. In fact, you'll find that my Mercy is a little more aggressive than Mercies you would see on other lobbies. But I think the Catechist Blaster is massively underused, but the fact that it has no damage drop-off is very unique and is very, very powerful in certain situations. So Catechist Blaster, make sure you use it. Don't neglect it. I know that you think Mercy's goal is to only damage buff and heal. I think the Catechist Blaster is actually better than the damage buff, except for, you know, when Bastion needs a damage buff. That's useful, and every character who is ulting can really damage or benefit from the damage buff, like I think I said. Moving on to the L1, or the left bumper, is the Guardian Angel ability. Now, the maximum range of Guardian Angel is 30 meters and the cooldown is 2 seconds. Basically, there are two ways to use Guardian Angel. One, you use it to get from teammate to teammate to heal them, and the other is to get out of a fight if things get really hectic or if you start getting flanked and the person that you are beaming is not helping you out with that. So, those are the two instances you really need to use it. There's not much else to it, really. But one thing I will add on to that is when you are a healer, your life matters more than the person you're healing most of the time. When you're a healer on the field in this game, you should be the last person to die, especially when you're Mercy because of her ultimate. Speaking of her ultimate, it is called Resurrect. It restores the full health to all fallen allies. It has a maximum range of 15 meters. It's a 15-meter radius. And the duration has a 1 second casting time. You are vulnerable during this 1 second. Definitely keep that in mind before you cast. Try jumping or gaining some momentum in the air. That way you're a bit harder to hit during the animation. And the charge required is 1,300 points. But to me, that just means, or that doesn't really mean anything. But getting your charge for your ultimate actually comes up relatively quickly. So every time you see ×2 on the Resurrect meter in the center of your screen, go ahead and press it. 9 times out of 10, there's no harm in doing it because you get your ultimate back relatively quickly anyhow. So, now that we've covered all of the entirety of her kit, let's move on to strategies. Okay, the first thing I think you need to be aware of when it comes to Mercy and as far as strategies go is most Mercy play has everything to do with awareness. Combat awareness, what's going on the field, who's on the enemy team, how are they playing, who are my most talented players. Because when you're Mercy, you kind of have to make decisions sometimes whether or not to damage buff someone, whether or not to support one person or the other. And being aware of how the battle's going and what you can use to your advantage, and also micromanaging the health of your entire team, that's what makes a good Mercy. Now, the second point that makes a good Mercy, in my opinion, or hold on, let me just explain the awareness part real quick. When you're a healer, you have something called healer vision that allows you to see through walls. This allows you to track your teammates' health on the fly, being able to like look around quickly and, you know, see through the walls and make sure everyone's healthy. So making sure your team health stays up, flying from teammate to teammate, it's all about management and not getting yourself killed is essentially what I'm trying to say. So moving on to the second point, use your pistol. Do not neglect to use your pistol. It's actually very preferable that you do, because in my experience, guys, and this is just my experience, people do not take advantage of the damage buff the way they should. And in fact, sometimes you need to get someone off your back as well because you're Mercy. Pulling out your pistol is 9 times out of 10 a better option. Especially if you're not communicating with your team via headset. So, and like I said, people in public games don't usually, or even in private games, don't usually take advantage of the damage boost unless they're Bastion. So, that's just something I want to really bring home. I think it's super salient that you remember to use your goddamn pistol, because no one does it and it's actually really viable in my opinion. Now, let's talk about team compositions in regards to Mercy, because I think they're more important than the other segments, and you'll soon figure out why. Is that she works well with 2 tank teams. When you're a single target healer and you have 2 tanks on your team, odds are your ultimate's going to be up frequently, and that's going to be very useful. It's going to give your team a lot of momentum and just overall make the tanks more of a nuisance if they don't happen to focus fire on them. So really, really threatening when it comes to 2 tank compositions. Now, she can work on every other composition. I just think that's one of the only optimal instances because, you know, single target healers and tanks get along well. Now let's talk about counters and ideal matchups. Mercy has no ideal matchup or mashups. Ideal matchups. Simply because her gun is not as useful as, like, say, Soldier 76's assault rifle, Tracer's pulse pistols, or anything else, really. So she's not going to really counter anybody. Though, if I had to throw one in there for, like, completely anecdotal reasons, it would be Lucio, because for some reason I find it easy to shoot Lucio with the pistol, but that might just be me. So I don't think she has any ideal matchups. As far as counters, basically anyone aside from Lucio gets in a 1v1 situation with you, they usually have the upper hand. So it's very, very, very discouraged from, like, not fulfilling your role as a healer. You know, you're trying to provide support, you're not trying to be the primary damage. But you're an extra utility that changes the balance because you're healing as well as dealing some damage. A potential 100 DPS, it's not terrible, so. So I think that basically everyone counters her, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I'm very high right now. Now let's talk about button layouts. Now there's only one button change on console that I think is necessary for Mercy, and that is change weapon swap to left click on your left analog stick when you push it down. Switch it to that. That is the optimal way to have Mercy, because if you want to be a good Mercy, you're going to want to be able to switch on the fly from your heal beam to your pistol. Until someone ults, then you kind of just want to keep your staff out and buff them as well. But being able to switch between those as fast as possible has helped me win a lot of fights. I don't think I used it in that footage. I was actually doing a left-hand claw where my pointer finger was on the swap button, and my middle finger was pressing the L1 and L2 buttons, or left bumper and left trigger. So that's just a little food for thought. I think it's way better. I messed with it in one round. I was like, wow, this is way better. I wish I would have done this. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about Mercy, guys. I hope you learned something from this video. Also, I need your feedback, guys. I need your feedback as much as possible. I have changed the series significantly. I'm shortening the episodes out because of popular demand, so it's only going to be about 15 to 20 minute episodes tops. Even less than that if I can manage it. So let me know if you like the shorter episodes. And as for the review of the character, I will be moving that into another video entirely once I gather the footage. I'm sorry about the delay on the content, guys. I was busy helping my mom move into her new apartment. I don't really need to tell that story here, but that's just something that happened. Anyways, that's really all I have to say. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something, and if you did, well, that makes me happy. Love ya all. See you later.